I never thought I'd find myself standing at a crossroads like this. My life was comfortable, predictable, and I liked it that way. My name is Jack Thompson and I'm 32 years old. I'm an architect, specializing in residential and commercial designs. My job is demanding, but it gives me satisfaction and I'm good at it. The kind of good where people trust you to bring their vision to life, no questions asked. I've always prided myself on being someone people can rely on. Rachel, my wife, is 30. We've been married for 5 years. We met at a company event where I was giving a presentation, and Rachel was part of the marketing team that organized it. Her bright smile and easy laughter caught my attention from the start. We got along from day one, sharing stories over coffee after long hours of work. We had the kind of relationship where silence was never awkward, and our weekends were filled with hikes, movie nights, and occasional getaways. Our life together was everything I thought I wanted. We had a beautiful home in a quiet suburb, a dog named Max, and even a garden that Rachel loved to tend to. We didn't have children yet, but that was the plan. We were both working hard to build our careers, saving for the future, and enjoying the simple pleasures of married life. It was a Friday when everything changed. Rachel had a work conference scheduled out of town for the weekend. She told me about it casually over dinner, just like any other weekend plan. "I'm going to a marketing seminar up north this weekend," she said, wiping her hands on a towel after dinner. "Should be fun. I'll be back Sunday night." I smiled, pretending I wasn't completely tuned into the evening news on the TV. "Sounds good. Do you need help with anything? I could drive you to the airport or pick you up." "No, it's fine," she replied. "I'll be fine. The seminar is in a quiet town near the coast. I'm just going to get some fresh ideas for work. Plus, you could use the weekend to relax. No deadlines for you, right?" I chuckled, nodding. "Yeah, I've got plenty to do here. Enjoy yourself." That was that. I didn't give it another thought. Rachel and I had been married long enough for me to trust her implicitly. She worked hard and I appreciated everything she did. Her enthusiasm for her career and the way she balanced everything made me proud. I figured she deserved a little time away to recharge. Saturday came and my weekend began exactly as I'd imagined. I spent the day going through blueprints for a new project, grabbed some lunch, and then worked on finishing up a design for a new house. That evening, I grabbed a pizza, cracked open a beer, and plopped down on the couch to catch up on some documentaries I had been meaning to watch. The quiet routine was comforting and I didn't mind the solitude. Throughout the weekend, Rachel sent me a few text messages. She seemed tired from the seminar, mentioned how busy the day had been, and told me she was excited to get back home. Her tone was light and casual, and there was nothing in her messages to suggest anything was off. Sunday arrived and I was winding down my work for the week when I decided to check social media. I scrolled through a few posts from friends, some work updates, and then something caught my eye. Rachel had posted a photo on her Instagram stories. I paused. The picture showed her smiling brightly, holding a drink, and laughing with a man who looked all too familiar. It wasn't just any man. This was Daniel McCall, her boss at the marketing firm she worked for. The photo was taken at a bar, the kind of place Rachel and I had visited a few times on our own dates. There was something off about it. The picture wasn't just casual, it was intimate. The way Rachel was looking at him, how close they were standing together. They looked happy, too happy, and definitely more than just colleagues. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising discomfort in my chest. Maybe it was just an innocent night out after the seminar, I thought. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But as I kept scrolling, more stories appeared. Rachel and Daniel again. The two of them walking down a street together, laughing, then sitting at an outdoor table with drinks. It was clear they were far from the seminar. They were far from where she told me she'd be. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was nothing. Maybe they were just friends or colleagues having a good time after a long week. But my gut was telling me something different. I decided to wait for Rachel to come home before confronting her. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew that once she walked through that door, things would never be the same. By the time evening rolled around, I was pacing the living room, my mind racing. I tried to focus on the work I had left to do, but the images of Rachel with Daniel kept flashing in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Around 8 p.m., I heard the sound of our front door opening. My heart skipped a beat, and I forced myself to breathe steadily as I turned to greet her. Rachel walked in, her suitcase rolling behind her. She looked exhausted, her hair in a messy bun, wearing a casual shirt and jeans. She smiled at me, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone neutral, though I could feel the tension building in my chest. "How was the seminar?" "Exhausting," Rachel replied, dropping her suitcase near the door. So many people, so many ideas. I'm glad to be home. She stretched her arms above her head, looking relieved to be back. I nodded, but I could feel my pulse quicken. Glad to hear it, I said, keeping my voice calm. I saw your Instagram posts. Looks like you had a lot of fun. Her face froze for a moment before she quickly masked it with a nervous laugh. Oh, that. It was just a little celebration after the seminar. Daniel and I were just grabbing a drink, talking business stuff. Yeah. I leaned against the kitchen counter, crossing my arms. Because from the looks of it, you two were having a lot more fun than just talking business. Rachel shifted uneasily. She avoided my gaze and bit her lower lip. I could feel the distance growing between us, the wall she was putting up to defend whatever she was hiding. I didn't tell you the whole truth, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just business. I needed some time away. I stayed at a hotel, not at the seminar. I just needed a break, Jack. I needed some time for myself. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The truth was spilling out, but it wasn't the whole truth, not yet. Rachel, I said, my voice steady but cold. I saw everything. You and Daniel. The way you were with him, the way you looked at him. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. She exhaled sharply, a long pause stretching between us. Then finally her shoulders slumped in defeat. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did, and I didn't let her finish. No, Rachel. I'm done. You don't get to lie to me, and you don't get to keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic. Jack, please don't leave me. I can fix this. We can fix this. But I wasn't listening anymore. It was too late for apologies, too late for explanations. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with the tension neither of us could escape. I could see Rachel's eyes well up, her hands trembling as she reached out, trying to touch my arm, trying to bridge the distance that had now grown between us. But I pulled away, unable to process the emotions flooding through me. The betrayal, the lies, everything we had built together, it was all crumbling before my eyes. I can't just forget this, Rachel, I said, my voice quieter now, but still filled with conviction. You've been lying to me for months. I thought we had something real, something built on trust. But this is a whole different thing. She stood there, her lips parting as though she was trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. The silence between us was deafening. I could feel my chest tightening, my stomach in knots, as if the weight of everything was slowly crushing me. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved, had not only lied but had been seeing another man behind my back. Not just any man but her boss, someone I had no reason to distrust. I never wanted this to happen, Rachel whispered. I don't know how it got here. We started spending more time together at work and things got complicated. But Jack, it was just a fling, it didn't mean anything. It was stupid and I regret it. I swear. The words stung, but it was the way she said them, like it was nothing. Like it was a simple mistake that could be swept under the rug. But I wasn't blind anymore. I could see everything clearly now. The truth was like a slap to the face. I felt my heart break as I realized how little respect she had for me. Stupid. I echoed, my voice rising. You think this is just a stupid mistake? You've been lying to me, Rachel. You've been living a lie, and you think I'm just supposed to forgive you because you say it was a mistake. She stepped closer, her face softening, her hand reaching out again. Please, Jack. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused and I needed space. I made a mistake, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to fix it. I shook my head, backing away. I didn't know if I was angry, devastated, or just numb. Maybe I was all of them at once. But what I did know, what I felt in my bones, was that I couldn't continue living a lie. The woman I thought I knew was someone else entirely. And it was clear to me now, there was no going back. Rachel, I can't do this, I said, my voice firm. I can't keep pretending like everything is okay when it's not. You've crossed a line and I can't just ignore it. I need you to leave. Her eyes widened in shock and for a moment she just stood there, frozen. What? Jack, no, please don't. No, I interrupted, my heart pounding in my chest. It's over. I'm done. You need to go. Pack your things and leave. Now. I turned away, walking towards the door, feeling a cold detachment wash over me. It wasn't about anger anymore, it was about self-preservation. I had to protect myself. I couldn't stay in this toxic situation. Not when the truth was staring me in the face. Not when the woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Rachel stood there, her face pale, her eyes filled with desperation. Jack, please don't do this. You don't understand. I need you. We can work through this. But I couldn't listen anymore. I opened the door, turning back just once to look at her. No more excuses. No more lies. Get your things and leave. Rachel's shoulders slumped, and with a final tearful look, she walked upstairs. I stood at the door, my body tense, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Part of me wanted to break down, to fall apart, but I couldn't afford that. Not now. Not when I was finally standing up for myself. I heard her moving around upstairs, gathering her things, and I couldn't help but wonder how long this had been coming. How long had Rachel been living this double life? Had I been blind to the signs? The questions filled my mind, but I pushed them aside. There was no point in asking them now. The damage had already been done. An hour passed. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, trying to force myself to relax, to breathe. But every time I exhaled, the weight of the situation pressed harder against my chest. Finally, Rachel came down, her bags in hand. She didn't speak. She didn't try to explain herself anymore. She just looked at me one last time, her face a mix of guilt and sorrow. I didn't move to help her. I didn't offer her comfort. I just watched as she dragged her things to the car. Before she left, she turned to me one final time. I'll stay with my sister. If you change your mind, if you want to talk. I didn't let her finish. I walked to the door and opened it wide. I won't change my mind, Rachel. This is it. It's over. She stared at me for a moment, tears streaming down her face, before she finally nodded and walked out the door. The sound of her car engine starting and pulling out of the driveway echoed in my ears, and I felt like the world had suddenly gone silent. The house, once filled with laughter and shared moments, now felt hollow, like an empty shell. I closed the door, locked it, and turned off the porch light. The finality of it all hit me, but strangely there was no anger, no sense of vengeance. Just emptiness. I walked back to the couch, sat down, and stared at the floor, letting the silence envelop me. It was over. And now, I had to figure out what came next. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something inside me shift. Something had broken, yes, but in its place there was a new clarity. A sense of self-worth that I hadn't known was missing before. Rachel had betrayed me, yes. But now, I had to focus on myself. On healing. On moving forward. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, working long hours at the office, trying to drown out the constant loop of thoughts in my head. Rachel's face, her words, the images of her with Daniel, they all haunted me. But as the hours passed, something inside me began to shift. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't consumed by rage. I was tired of feeling like a victim, tired of letting her betrayal control me. I spent the next morning at the office, staring at blueprints and ignoring calls and messages from friends who wanted to check in. They all knew what had happened, and I didn't have the energy to explain. It wasn't their fault, but I didn't need their sympathy. I didn't need anyone to pity me. That evening, after another quiet dinner of takeout, I realized that something was missing. It wasn't just Rachel. It was the way I had been living. The way I had been letting myself go along with life without questioning things, without setting boundaries. I had been so wrapped up in her and our plans for the future that I had forgotten about myself. Forgotten who I was before all of this. I needed to change. I had to take control of my life again. The next morning, I called my boss and told him I needed to take a week off. He didn't ask questions, which was good. He knew I had been through something personal, and I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I spent that first day at home, staring at the walls, reflecting on everything. The house felt eerily quiet without Rachel, and I couldn't decide if it was a relief or a curse. But I couldn't sit in that silence for too long. I needed to get out. I packed a small bag, grabbed my keys, and decided to take a short road trip. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I had to go somewhere. The West Coast was calling me, and I wanted to drive, to be alone with my thoughts, to clear my mind. I had always wanted to do a solo trip, to get away from the routine and see something new. Now seemed like the perfect time. I drove for hours, through small towns and along the coastline, stopping only when I needed to refuel or stretch my legs. It was freeing in a way, but also surreal. I was running away from everything that had just happened, trying to escape the pain, but I knew it wouldn't be that easy. It wasn't about escaping, it was about finding something within myself. A new purpose, a new direction. As I passed through various towns, I stopped at a few spots along the coast, places I had never been before but always wanted to see. Each stop gave me time to reflect on the past, on my marriage, on the mistakes I had made, and the lessons I had learned. It was during one of these stops, as I was walking along a quiet beach, that I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. The anger, the heartbreak, the confusion, it all hit me like a wave, and I wasn't prepared for it. But I didn't try to push it away. I let it come. I cried, something I hadn't done in days, and for the first time since Rachel left, I felt like I was releasing all the pent-up emotion I had been holding inside. The feeling wasn't exactly cathartic, it didn't fix everything, but it was the beginning of something. I realized I couldn't keep pretending like I was fine. I couldn't keep hiding from the reality of what had happened. I had to face it. I had to move on. The following days were a mix of exploring new places, meeting new people, and spending time with myself. I learned a lot on that trip, about the world around me, but more importantly, about myself. I didn't need Rachel to define me. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. I was enough on my own. But even in the midst of all this self-reflection, I knew I wasn't done yet. There was still the matter of the divorce, of what came next. I couldn't ignore it. But the clarity I had gained during my trip helped me understand that I needed to be decisive. I couldn't linger in this limbo forever. On the third day of my trip, I called a divorce lawyer. I found a firm that had been recommended by a coworker, and I scheduled an appointment for the following week. I knew it would be difficult, but it was the right thing to do. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork. It wasn't even telling people about the divorce. It was the realization that this chapter of my life was truly over. The relationship I had built with Rachel was shattered, and no amount of effort on my part could fix it. But what I could do was rebuild. Rebuild my life, my happiness, my peace of mind. When I returned home, I didn't feel the same weight on my shoulders. There was a sense of relief, a small but growing sense of freedom. I wasn't looking back anymore. I wasn't holding on to a life that no longer existed. The house felt different, still empty but with a sense of possibility. I began to focus on myself again. I worked out more, took up new hobbies, and spent time with friends who had supported me through the tough times. Every day I felt more and more like myself again. And as I slowly began to heal, I realized that the person who was most important in all of this was me. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I didn't need anyone to make me whole. I was whole already. I just had to remind myself of that. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Rachel and I went through the motions, dividing assets and signing papers, but by then I had already moved on. She had her own life to rebuild and I had mine. Our paths were no longer intertwined. But I couldn't say I didn't think about her from time to time. I did. I thought about how we had started, how I had loved her with everything I had. But that was before the lies, before the betrayal. Now I was focused on the future, on rebuilding my life, and on finding the kind of love that was built on honesty and trust. And when I was ready, I would find it. But for now, I was content with the person I had become. Stronger, wiser, and more certain of who I was than I had ever been before. The hardest part was behind me. The rest was up to me. It had been months since Rachel left, and even longer since I had found out about her betrayal. I had taken those first few weeks of solitude to process everything, to allow myself to feel the hurt and the anger. But now I could feel something different inside me, something lighter. Something that felt like freedom. I had been working hard to put my life back together, one piece at a time. At first, it felt like I was just going through the motions. My routine was the same. I woke up early, went to the office, met with clients, and came home to a quiet house. But over time, I began to fill that silence with things that brought me peace. I started exercising more regularly, taking long walks along the beach and spending weekends exploring parts of the city I had never visited. I started to reconnect with old friends, the ones I had lost touch with during the busy years of marriage. One evening, about 6 months after Rachel left, I decided to attend a networking event for architects. It was held at a new restaurant downtown, and I knew a few people who were attending. I wasn't expecting much, but I thought it might be good to get out, meet some new people, and shake off the last remnants of isolation that had clung to me. I arrived early, grabbed a drink, and stood in the corner, observing the crowd. My mind wandered to the life I had been living just a year ago, the dinners with Rachel, the plans we had made for our future. I had always imagined us growing old together, building a family, traveling the world. But now, all that seemed like a distant dream, one that had been shattered by lies and betrayal. A few people greeted me as they walked by, and I nodded politely, not in the mood for small talk. But then I saw her. Emily. She was standing by the bar, talking with a group of people, laughing at something one of them had said. I didn't recognize her at first, but something about her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke, drew me in. I knew then that I wanted to talk to her. I hesitated for a moment. My mind flashed to Rachel, how I had thought she was the one, how deeply I had loved her. But I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to carry the weight of my past into a future I was just beginning to build. I had to move on. I had to be open to new possibilities. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the bar and stood next to Emily. She noticed me right away, her gaze meeting mine with a warm smile. "Hi there," she said, her voice friendly and confident. "Are you here for the event?" I nodded, smiling back. "Yeah, I'm Jack. I'm an architect. I think you're the first person I've actually spoken to tonight." "Well, it's a pretty packed event," Emily said, taking a sip of her drink. "I'm Emily, by the way. I'm a designer." "Nice to meet you, Jack." We talked for a while, exchanging stories about our careers, our passions, and what brought us to the event. It was refreshing, honestly. We didn't talk about relationships or baggage, we talked about who we were, who we wanted to be. It felt like I was talking to someone who understood the need for balance. Someone who could listen without judgment and laugh without reservation. As the evening went on, I found myself enjoying her company more and more. It was different than the conversations I had with Rachel. With Rachel, everything had felt familiar, comfortable, even predictable. But with Emily there was a spark, a curiosity that made me feel alive again. By the end of the night, as the event was winding down, Emily and I exchanged numbers. She said she'd love to meet up for coffee sometime and continue our conversation. I left the event feeling lighter than I had in months. It was as though a door had opened and I was standing on the threshold of something new. Not just with Emily but with myself. I had spent so long mired in the past, caught in the storm of betrayal and hurt, that I hadn't allowed myself to see that there was a whole world ahead of me. A world where I could be happy again, where I could rebuild what had been broken. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I met up with Emily a few more times for coffee and dinner, and every time I felt more at ease. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, our favorite movies, childhood memories, hopes for the future. She had been through her own share of heartbreak, and we understood each other in a way that felt refreshing. It wasn't romantic at first. It wasn't rushed. But as time went on, I began to realize that I was starting to care about her. Not because she was a replacement for Rachel, but because she was someone who brought something new into my life. She challenged me in ways I hadn't expected, made me laugh when I didn't think I could, and made me feel like I wasn't defined by my past. A few months into our budding friendship, Emily asked me one evening as we walked through the city, "Have you ever thought about what you want in a relationship now? After everything that's happened with your ex?" I thought about it for a moment, the silence between us filling with the weight of my past. I used to think I knew what I wanted. I thought I had it all figured out. But now, I just want honesty, trust. I want to build something real this time. No pretenses. Emily smiled softly, nodding. "That's a good place to start. It's a hard lesson to learn, but it's the only one that matters in the end." It was then that I realized that I was no longer the man who had been hurt by Rachel's betrayal. I was someone different now. Stronger, wiser, more aware of what I deserved. And I was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it was with Emily or on my own. The past had shaped me, yes, but it no longer controlled me. I was free. And that freedom, though hard one, was the greatest gift I could have given myself. The next chapter of my life was waiting and I was ready for it. But for now I was content to take it one step at a time. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. My life began to settle into a new rhythm, one I had never anticipated but one that felt right. I spent more time with Emily, slowly building a bond that was grounded in trust and understanding, without the rush that had marked my past. Our connection wasn't defined by the need to fill an emptiness, but by a shared sense of respect and an easygoing companionship that made me realize how little I had known about what I truly wanted in a relationship. Despite the peace I had found in myself, there were moments when the past crept back in. Small things like the way Emily laughed at a joke would remind me of Rachel. The faintest touch or the way we held hands would echo the memories I had buried. But it was different now. I wasn't clinging to those memories with desperation. Instead, I was learning to appreciate the present, the new life I was creating. One afternoon, while Emily and I were walking through the park, she asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Do you ever think about what happened with Rachel?" she asked, her voice gentle but with a hint of curiosity. "About what she did and how it shaped you?" I glanced over at her, wondering how I felt about the question. I had thought about it, of course, but not often. Not the way I once did. "I think about it sometimes," I said slowly, trying to find the right words. "But I don't let it define me anymore. Rachel hurt me, but she also showed me what I truly need in a partner. She made me realize that I deserve trust, honesty, and respect above all else. And I don't want to settle for less than that again." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Jack. It's really admirable how much you've grown through all this. I don't think I could have handled it as well as you did." I smiled, appreciating her kind words. I didn't have a choice. Sometimes life forces you to change whether you're ready for it or not. But I think it's for the better. We continued walking, and I could feel a sense of peace settle over me. The weight of the past no longer felt so heavy. Sure, it had shaped me, but it didn't control my future. I was in charge of that now. A few days later, I found myself at work, sitting in my office, reviewing some new design proposals for a commercial project. But my mind kept drifting back to Emily. Things had become more serious between us, though neither of us had rushed to label what was happening. The honesty we shared, the way we communicated without games or pretenses, felt different from anything I had ever experienced. It felt real. The phone on my desk rang, pulling me from my thoughts. "Jack, it's your lawyer. He needs to speak with you about your divorce settlement." My assistant's voice came through the line. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Even though I had been through the legal motions months ago, I had heard little from my attorney since. The paperwork was signed, the assets divided, but there were still loose ends to tie up. I had expected this call at some point, but I hadn't been ready for it. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer's number. "Hello, this is Jack Thompson." "Hey Jack," the lawyer's voice came through. "I've got some updates for you. There's been a new development in your divorce proceedings." My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of development?" "It's about Rachel," he said. "She's requested a modification to the settlement. She's asking for a larger portion of the house's equity, citing financial strain after the divorce. I'm just giving you a heads up before we proceed." I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over me. I had already given her more than enough. The house, the financial split, it had all been fair, all done by the book. "Why now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why would she be asking for more now?" The lawyer paused for a moment. "I can't speak to her reasoning, Jack, but it's common in some cases for one party to try for a larger settlement after some time. We can contest it if you're firm on the original terms. I'll need your response by the end of the week." I felt a sudden frustration bubble up. Rachel hadn't thought about my side of things when she cheated, when she shattered everything we had. Now she was asking for more, as though I hadn't already paid the price for her mistakes. "I don't want to drag this out any longer," I said, my voice firm. "If she's not happy with the settlement, then let's contest it. I've moved on, and I'm not interested in revisiting the past. Tell her it's not happening." "Understood," the lawyer said. "I'll take care of it. I'll keep you updated." After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window of my office. The weight of Rachel's continued presence in my life, her attempts to cling to what was over, felt exhausting. I had no interest in giving her any more of my energy. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that it hurt. I had worked so hard to move on, to rebuild, and now it felt like she was trying to drag me back into that mess. I pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the project in front of me, trying to let the moment pass. I couldn't let her control me anymore. I had learned the hard way that holding on to the past only delayed my growth. That evening, Emily called, asking if I wanted to meet for dinner. I agreed immediately, needing a break from the stress of the day. As we sat down at the restaurant, her presence immediately soothed me. She had this calming effect on me, a quiet assurance that made everything feel manageable. We talked about our days, our work, and the future. It was simple, but it was enough. "You've got this," Emily said, smiling as we clinked our glasses together. "You're in control now. Whatever happens with Rachel or anything else, you don't have to go back to that place you were." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude for her words. "I know. It just feels like a new chapter, and I'm ready to turn the page." As we finished dinner, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Rachel's demands, her attempts to control me, none of it mattered. I had moved on, and I was going to keep moving forward. The past was behind me. And with Emily by my side, I was beginning to see the future as something full of possibilities. Life wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face them, knowing that I was strong enough to handle whatever came my way. And as for Rachel, she no longer had any hold over me. I was moving on, and I was finally free. As the weeks continued to pass, I felt a new rhythm settling into my life. I had grown accustomed to the quiet of the house without Rachel. The evenings were still, but not in a lonely way. Instead, they were peaceful. I had learned how to be content in my own company again. My time with Emily had become more regular, and there was a quiet ease between us that grew with each passing day. We hadn't rushed into anything, and it felt natural. No pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other at their own pace. But as much as I appreciated the comfort of our connection, something unspoken lingered between us. It wasn't a bad thing. In fact, It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. A space where we both seemed to understand that we were on the verge of something important, but neither of us was in a rush to define it. We were taking our time, but I knew we were slowly building something real. One afternoon, as Emily and I sat in a quiet park, watching the leaves fall from the trees, she turned to me with a question that had been on her mind for a while. "Jack," she said, her voice soft but with a serious undertone, "do you think you'll ever get married again?" I was surprised by the question, though I shouldn't have been. Our relationship had evolved in a way that made this kind of question inevitable. We had spent enough time together that we were beginning to ask ourselves what the future might hold. Still, I wasn't prepared for the vulnerability it stirred in me. I took a deep breath, my mind running through the possibilities. "I don't know," I said finally, looking out over the lake. "I used to think that I wanted to settle down again, to get married. But after everything with Rachel, I guess I'm still figuring out what that even means for me. What marriage should look like." Emily nodded, her eyes reflecting understanding. "I get that. It's hard, isn't it? The idea of trusting someone completely again, giving them that part of yourself. Especially after everything you've been through." I felt a knot form in my stomach. It was true. Trust, once broken, didn't just magically heal. It took time. And even now, with all the progress I had made, I knew part of me was still healing from the scars of my past. It wasn't just about Rachel. It was about me, about what I had learned about myself and the kind of partner I wanted to be. "But I also know," I continued, "that whatever happens, I can't be afraid of what's next. I can't live in fear of what happened before. I want to believe in the possibility of something new." "Exactly," Emily said, her smile warm and encouraging. "And I'm not in a rush either. We can just take things one day at a time. See where it goes. I'm happy with how things are right now. Are you?" I smiled back, feeling a genuine sense of peace. "Yeah, I'm happy." We sat there in comfortable silence for a few more moments, the sun casting long shadows on the ground, the world around us moving in slow motion. I knew Emily wasn't asking me to make any decisions about the future. She was just trying to understand where I stood, and where we might be headed. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel pressured. There was no ticking clock, no urgency. I didn't have to have all the answers right away. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was trying to outrun my past. I was simply moving forward, step by step, trusting that the right decisions would come when the time was right. The following weekend, Emily and I went for a hike in the mountains. We spent the day walking through trails surrounded by tall trees, talking and laughing, and enjoying the simplicity of nature. It felt good to be out in the fresh air, disconnected from the stresses of work and the complexities of life. The more time I spent with Emily, the more I realized that I wasn't just healing from my past, I was building something new. And for the first time, I could see a future that didn't feel clouded by doubt. By the time we reached the top of the trail, the view of the valley below was breathtaking. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape. We sat down on a large rock, taking in the scenery, both of us quiet for a few moments. I turned to her, my heart full of gratitude. "I'm glad we did this. This trip, this time together, it's been exactly what I needed." She looked at me, her gaze steady and kind. "I'm glad too, Jack. You're a good person. You deserve to be happy." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words sink in. In the past, I had thought that happiness was something I had to chase, something that would come to me when I had everything in place. But now, I was beginning to realize that happiness was something I could choose for myself. It was in the moments of connection, in the trust one was building with Emily, and in the peace I was finding within myself. As we headed back down the mountain, hand in hand, I felt a quiet sense of certainty I hadn't known in years. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was simply living, and that was enough. The next few months were filled with more adventures, more quiet moments with Emily, and more growth on my part. I continued to focus on my work, but I also allowed myself to enjoy the life I was building outside of it. I spent time with friends, took up new hobbies, and started volunteering at a local community center. I was learning what it meant to be whole, to be happy on my own terms. And through all of it, I never forgot the lessons I had learned from my past. Rachel's betrayal had taught me what I valued most: honesty, trust, and mutual respect. But more than anything, it had shown me the importance of trusting myself, of knowing my worth, and of not settling for anything less than I deserved. One evening, as Emily and I sat on the porch watching the stars, she turned to me with a smile. "Do you think you'll ever trust again?" "Fully, I mean?" she asked, her voice soft. I looked at her, the question hanging between us, but instead of feeling uncertain, I felt calm. I had already begun trusting again. Not because I was foolproof, but because I was learning to trust myself. And that was the first step. I already do, I said quietly. I trust myself. And that's enough for now. We sat in silence, letting the cool night air surround us, feeling the weight of the world lifted by the simple understanding between us. The future was still unwritten, but for the first time I was excited to see where it would take me. Life, it seemed, had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. In the months that followed, Emily and I continued to grow closer, but we never rushed things. There was no need to. Everything just fit. Our relationship had become a quiet comfort, a foundation I could stand on without fear of it crumbling beneath me. I could trust in it because it was built on something solid: honesty, shared experiences, and the freedom to be ourselves. Despite the ease that had come into my life, I was still sometimes haunted by the remnants of the past. No matter how much I had moved on, there were still moments when I questioned if I had truly let go of everything Rachel had put me through. I had always thought that time would heal all wounds. But time didn't heal them, it just gave me the space to understand them better. One afternoon I was sitting at a cafe working on a new design for a client, when I got an unexpected message. It was from Rachel. I hadn't heard from her in months. It had been almost a year since she left. The message was short and to the point. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out, just to say I hope you've found the peace you deserve. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling the weight of those words settle into me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to forget it ever happened, but something inside me told me I needed to respond. Not for her but for me. I needed to close the chapter for good. I took a deep breath and typed my reply. It was simple, honest, and without any bitterness. Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. I've found peace, Rachel. And I've moved forward. I wish you the best. I sat back, looking at the message for a moment longer before hitting send. It felt like a final step in this long process of healing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I had simply let go, and that was all I needed to do. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. I returned to my work, but there was a new sense of calm in me. I wasn't carrying the past with me anymore. I had fully moved on, and that felt like the most powerful thing I could do. A few days later, Emily and I were walking through the local farmer's market when I felt a sudden urge to share something with her. We had talked about everything else, but this was different. Emily, I began, pausing in the middle of the crowded market, I wanted to tell you something. I got a message from Rachel yesterday. She stopped walking, her expression softening as she looked at me. How do you feel about it? I'm fine, I said. I replied. It's in the past and I'm finally at peace with it. I think I've let go of everything. All the anger, all the hurt. It doesn't hold me anymore. Emily smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. I'm proud of you, Jack. It's not easy to do that. To move on from something like that. But it shows how far you've come. I smiled back, feeling the weight of her words. Thank you. It wasn't easy, but it's worth it. I'm finally free of that chapter. We continued walking through the market, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, the laughter of children playing nearby, and the hum of people enjoying the day. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Right here, right now, in the present. That night, as Emily and I sat on the couch together watching a movie and sipping wine, I realized something important. The fear that had once held me captive, the fear of being hurt again, of trusting someone fully, was gone. It had been replaced by something even stronger, the trust one had built in myself. I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew I was capable of handling whatever life threw my way. Whether it was love, loss, or new beginnings, I had the strength to face it. And that was all I needed to know. Our relationship, slow as it was to develop, had given me the space to heal and the time to grow. Emily wasn't a replacement for Rachel, and I didn't need her to be. She was someone new, someone who helped me rediscover what it meant to trust again. We didn't need to rush toward the future. We didn't need to define it. It would unfold when the time was right. But what mattered most was that, for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what might come. I knew that no matter where life took me, I was strong enough to face it. As I looked at Emily, her hand in mine, I couldn't help but smile. This was my life now. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that, I realized, was more than enough. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. And with that, I finally felt whole again. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was looking forward, ready for whatever the future held. And whatever it was, I knew I was ready to face it, not alone, but with someone who understood and accepted me, flaws and all. For the first time in a long time, I was content. I had found peace not just with the past, but with myself. And that was the most important thing of all. The journey wasn't over, but it felt like I was on the right path, one I could walk with my head held high, knowing that the best was yet to come. As the months rolled on, I found myself more and more at peace with the life I was building. Emily and I continued to grow closer, but there was no pressure. We enjoyed the small moments, the spontaneous weekends, the quiet evenings spent talking about everything and nothing. We both understood the importance of letting things unfold naturally, without rushing or forcing anything. One evening, while we were sitting on the balcony of my house, watching the sunset over the city skyline, Emily turned to me with a look in her eyes that made my heart race. "Jack," she began, her voice soft, "I've been thinking a lot about us. About where we're headed." I met her gaze, my stomach doing a little flip. "Yeah." She smiled, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty in her eyes. "I know we've both been through a lot. And we've taken our time with this. But I can't help but feel like we're on the verge of something bigger. Something real." I felt my heart beat faster as I listened. We had been through so much together already, emotional baggage, heartbreak, and healing, but this was different. This wasn't just about moving on from the past. It was about the future, about what we could build together. "I think you're right," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I don't want to rush, but I know that what we have, it's something special. I've never felt this way before. I trust you, Emily. And I can see a future with you in it." Her eyes softened as she reached for my hand. "I trust you too, Jack. I think we've both learned what we need in a relationship. And I'm ready to see where this goes with you." That moment, under the fading light of the sunset, felt like a turning point. It wasn't about perfect timing or the right circumstances. It was about us, right here, right now, deciding to move forward together. No baggage from the past, no uncertainty about the future, just a clear understanding of where we stood and where we wanted to go. The next few weeks were a blur of new experiences. We took a weekend trip to a small coastal town, exploring the quaint streets, eating fresh seafood, and getting lost in each other's company. We talked about everything from childhood memories to dreams for the future, and shared our hopes and fears. It felt like we were building a foundation, brick by brick, of something solid and lasting. One afternoon, while we were walking through a local park, Emily stopped suddenly, her hand still holding mine, and turned to face me. Her eyes were searching, almost as if she were looking for something in me. "I've been thinking," she said, hesitating for a moment. "Do you think we're ready for something more serious? I mean, we've been taking it slow, and I'm not in any rush, but I just wanted to know what you're thinking." The question caught me off guard, but in the best way possible. I realized that this was the moment where everything we had been building came to a head. It wasn't just about enjoying the present anymore, it was about choosing the future together. I looked at Emily, her face open and vulnerable, and for the first time, I realized how much I had come to trust her. Not just in a romantic sense, but in every sense. She had given me the space to grow, to heal, and to rediscover myself. And now I was ready to take the next step. "Emily," I began, squeezing her hand, "I think I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I know that I want to be with you, and I think we're on the same page. I've never felt more sure about anything in my life." Her smile was all the reassurance I needed. We didn't need grand gestures or declarations. What we had was built on something stronger: understanding, trust, and mutual respect. "Good," she said softly, leaning in to kiss me. "I'm ready too." It wasn't an immediate rush into anything, but something had shifted between us. We both knew that we had something worth holding on to, something worth nurturing. Our bond had deepened, and it wasn't just about love, it was about the life we were beginning to create together. The past was behind me, and the future was wide open. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what was to come. As we walked hand in hand back to the car, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. There was a time when I had been lost, unsure of who I was and what I wanted. The pain of Rachel's betrayal had been consuming, and for a while, it felt like I would never be able to move past it. But now I had found my way. I had rediscovered who I was, and in doing so, I had found someone who understood me, who accepted me for who I was. Emily had become a partner, a friend, and someone I could envision a future with. The days that followed were filled with small steps toward a life that was truly mine. I focused on my work, but also on building a healthy balance between my personal and professional life. I made more time for friends, for hobbies, and for Emily. I didn't feel like I was rushing anymore, and I didn't feel like I was looking over my shoulder at the past. I was in the present, and it was enough. And as I stood there, looking out at the city lights with Emily by my side, I realized something important. I wasn't just moving on from the past. I was moving toward something better. Something real. I wasn't the same person I was a year ago. I was stronger, more self-aware, and more open to what the future had to offer. And the future, I knew, was full of endless possibilities. With Emily by my side, I was ready for whatever came next. This was just the beginning. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of my life. Emily and I had settled into a comfortable, natural routine. Our relationship had deepened, and though we had no immediate plans for grand gestures or milestones, there was an unspoken understanding between us. We were building something lasting, something that didn't need labels or promises to feel real. It was just right. But as I looked at the life I had created, there were moments when I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. Not just in terms of my relationship with Emily, but in terms of who I was now. The man who had once been shattered by betrayal was now stronger, more grounded, and above all at peace. I had rebuilt my life not just by focusing on what I had lost, but by learning to appreciate everything I had gained in the process. Work had become more fulfilling. I had taken on a few new projects, each one more exciting and challenging than the last. I was no longer merely going through the motions. I had rediscovered the passion I once had for architecture, and my designs were reflecting a new sense of purpose. I had learned to balance ambition with self-care, realizing that success wasn't just about what I could achieve professionally, it was about finding fulfillment in all areas of my life. Emily continued to be a steady presence. She was my rock, but more than that, she was my partner in every sense of the word. We encouraged each other, pushed each other, and supported each other's goals. There were still moments of vulnerability, of course, as we each carried our own histories with us. But we had learned to embrace those vulnerabilities together, understanding that growth didn't come from perfection. It came from the willingness to be open and honest with one another. One evening, after a long day at work, Emily and I sat on the couch, flipping through a book we had been reading together. The silence was comfortable, a shared space where we didn't need to fill the air with words. But then Emily closed the book and turned to face me. "Jack," she said quietly, her voice tentative but sure, "I've been thinking about something. About us." I turned toward her, noticing the seriousness in her eyes. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated for a moment, her fingers fidgeting with the edges of the book. "I know we're not rushing into anything, but do you think we're ready to take the next step? I mean, really commit to building a future together? I'm not talking about the traditional stuff, just a real, solid partnership." Her words hung in the air between us. It wasn't a proposal in the conventional sense, but it was a question that required serious thought. I'd spent so much time rebuilding after Rachel's betrayal, so much time learning to trust myself and others again, that the idea of committing to a future with Emily felt like both an exciting possibility and a daunting one. "I think about that all the time," I said after a pause, my voice steady. "I think we've already started that journey. What we have, what we've built, it's strong and it feels real. But I also think it's important to take our time. I want us to keep growing, together but also individually. We don't need to rush. We have time." Emily smiled, a soft, knowing smile, and I could see the relief in her eyes. "I agree. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page." We sat in silence for a while longer, the weight of her question lingering in the air. It wasn't about rushing into anything. It was about recognizing that we had something real, something worth building. The idea of the future, of sharing it with someone, felt less intimidating now. It felt like a promise I was willing to make, slowly, thoughtfully, without fear. The following weeks passed by in a blur of work, weekend getaways, and quiet moments with Emily. We continued to build our relationship on a foundation of trust and mutual respect, savoring the moments we shared without worrying about where things might lead. It felt good to be in a space where there was no pressure, no expectation, just two people who cared about each other, supporting each other as we navigated the complexities of life. One day, as we sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, Emily turned to me with a gentle smile. "Jack," she said, her voice quiet but full of warmth, "I've been thinking, maybe we should take that trip we've talked about. You know, the one to the mountains? A little adventure, just the two of us. We've both worked hard and I think it's time to take a break." I laughed, feeling a wave of excitement at the idea. "I love that idea. Let's do it. A weekend in the mountains sounds perfect." We spent the next few weeks planning the trip, researching trails, booking a cabin, and figuring out everything we would need for a few days of hiking and relaxation. The idea of escaping the hustle and bustle of everyday life was exactly what I needed. It would be a time to unplug, to disconnect from the world, and to just enjoy each other's company. No distractions, no stress. Just the two of us in the quiet beauty of the mountains. When the weekend finally arrived, we packed our bags and set off on the drive to the mountains. As we drove through the winding roads, the city slowly fading into the distance, I couldn't help but feel a sense of freedom wash over me. This trip, this moment, represented everything I had worked so hard for: the ability to live in the present, to embrace the future without fear, and to cherish the small, beautiful moments with someone who truly understood me. We spent the weekend hiking through the forest, exploring the trails, and enjoying the breathtaking views from the mountain peaks. We laughed, we talked, and we enjoyed the quiet, simple pleasures of being together. As the days passed, I felt a deeper sense of gratitude for the life I was building, for the woman by my side, and for the journey I had taken to get here. On the last night of our trip, as we sat outside by the fire, Emily looked at me with a soft smile, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the flames. "Jack," she said, her voice filled with quiet affection, "I'm really glad we did this. This trip, this time together, it's been perfect." I reached for her hand, holding it gently in mine. "Me too. It's been everything I needed. And more." In that moment, with the crackling fire and the star-filled sky above us, I realized something important. I had finally found peace, not just with the past but with the future. Whatever came next, whatever challenges life threw my way, I knew I was ready for it. Because now, I wasn't just moving forward, I was doing it with someone who made me feel whole again. Someone who showed me that love, trust, and partnership weren't just about avoiding pain, they were about embracing the journey together. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. The future was wide open, and I was ready to walk it with Emily, hand in hand. This was just the beginning. The mountain trip had been everything I had hoped for: peaceful, rejuvenating, and full of simple joys. As Emily and I made our way back home, there was a noticeable shift in the air between us. It wasn't just the crisp mountain air or the clear skies we had left behind. It was something deeper, an unspoken understanding that we were both ready for the next phase of our journey, whatever that might look like. When we arrived back at my house, I found myself thinking more about the future. Not the distant future where everything was uncertain, but the near future, the days and months ahead, the decisions we would make together. I had always known that I wanted something more from life, but I was beginning to realize that more wasn't just about personal success or achievements. It was about building something lasting with the person who mattered most. We didn't talk about it immediately, but I could feel the change between us. There was a quiet anticipation in the way we looked at each other, a sense that we were both on the same page without needing to voice it. The trip had solidified something in me, something I had been feeling for months but hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Emily and I were at the coffee shop one Sunday morning when the subject finally came up. She had always been open with me, her thoughts laid bare without hesitation, and today was no different. We were sitting across from each other, sipping our drinks, the noise of the cafe fading into the background as she spoke. "Jack, I've been thinking," she said, her tone steady but with a hint of vulnerability, "about us, and about what we want in the future." I looked at her, my heart beating a little faster, but I didn't interrupt. I was ready to hear whatever it was she needed to say. "I don't know what it is about this time with you, these last few months, but it feels like I'm more sure of what I want. I've been through my own share of mess just like you. But what we have, it feels different. It feels real," she continued, her eyes searching mine. "I'm not asking for anything rushed, but I want you to know that I'm ready to take that step if you are." The words hung in the air for a moment and I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a proposal, not in the traditional sense. But it was everything I needed to hear. I had known for a while now that Emily was the person I wanted to share my life with, but hearing her say it out loud made everything feel that much more certain. "Emily," I said, taking her hand in mine, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The last year has shown me that love, trust, and commitment aren't about rushing into something. They're about the foundation we build. And I know that what we have is worth building on. I'm ready to. I want to share my future with you." She smiled, her eyes bright with relief and happiness. "I'm glad, Jack. I really am." That afternoon, as we left the cafe and walked through the park hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The uncertainty that had once clouded my thoughts was gone. There was no more fear of betrayal, no more hesitation about what the future might hold. I had found someone who made me feel safe, seen, and loved for exactly who I was. And together we were ready to take the next step. Over the next few weeks, our conversations about the future deepened. We talked about everything, from the kind of home we wanted to create, to the places we still wanted to visit, to the values we wanted to instill in our future family. There was no rush. We knew we had time and we didn't need to make any immediate decisions. But we were building something solid, and that foundation was exactly what we both needed. As time passed, I found myself embracing the changes in my life with a quiet confidence. The pain of my past, the betrayal that had once defined me, no longer held me captive. I had let go of the anger, the fear, the doubt. And in its place was something new: hope. Hope for the future. Hope for what we could build together. And hope for a love that was stronger than anything I had experienced before. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Emily turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Jack, do you ever think about the future? I mean, really think about it, beyond just what we want in the moment?" I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. "I do. I think about what we want to create together. I think about how we're going to navigate life's challenges, the highs and lows. But I also think about how much I've learned in the last year. And one of the biggest things I've learned is that the future is built on the choices we make today. And I choose you." Her eyes softened and she smiled, a smile that made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "I choose you too," she whispered, leaning in to kiss me. In that moment, I knew that everything I had gone through, the heartbreak, the pain, the mistakes, had led me here to this place of understanding and clarity. I wasn't the man I had been a year ago. I was stronger, wiser, and more ready than ever to embrace the future. And with Emily by my side, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The past was behind me and the future was wide open. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would take us. The weeks following our conversation about the future were filled with quiet joy. Emily and I continued to grow together, each day feeling more certain that we were on the right path. It wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It was the small, everyday moments that mattered most. Whether it was cooking dinner together, taking weekend hikes, or sitting in the quiet of the evening with our favorite music in the background, we were building something steady, something real. One evening, as we were curled up on the couch, I turned to Emily, watching her as she laughed at something silly on TV. I couldn't help but smile. She had become such a constant in my life, a presence that made everything feel more grounded. It was hard to imagine a life without her. And though we hadn't formally talked about next steps in terms of commitment, I felt a deep knowing that we were already making those steps together every day. "You know," I said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot lately about us and how we've been moving forward." Emily turned to look at me, her expression soft. "What about us?" "About how far we've come," I said, my voice a little quieter now. "About how much trust we've built. And how much I trust you, Emily. I haven't been this sure about something in a long time. And I want you to know that I'm here. I'm all in. I'm ready for whatever comes next for us." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment the world around us seemed to pause. There was a quiet understanding between us, a shared sense of commitment. She smiled, a little tenderly, and placed her hand on mine. "I'm all in too," she said, her voice steady, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I feel the same way, Jack. I'm not rushing things, but I know that what we have, it's real. And I want to keep building it with you." I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. It wasn't just the future we were building, it was the present too. It was the way we supported each other, trusted each other, and worked together to create something lasting. And it wasn't about perfection, it was about being real with each other, through everything. A few days later, as I was driving home from work, I received a call from my lawyer. I had almost forgotten about the last remnants of my divorce. Things had settled, paperwork had been signed, and Rachel had largely faded from my mind. But now, with this new call, I couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. "Jack," my lawyer said, his tone professional but with a hint of concern. "There's been an update on the financials from your divorce. Rachel has filed for an appeal, stating that the division of assets wasn't fair. She's challenging the settlement." My stomach tightened. It wasn't a surprise, really. After everything that had happened, I'd been prepared for the possibility that Rachel would try to revisit the past. Still, it stung. I didn't want to look back, didn't want to fight through that mess again. But I also knew I had to face it head-on. "I'm not interested in reopening things," I said firmly. "Tell her I'm not changing my stance. The settlement stands as it is." The lawyer paused for a moment as though weighing the options. "Understood. I'll take care of it, Jack. It may take some time, but I'll make sure everything is handled properly." I ended the call with a sigh. It wasn't the news I wanted to hear, but I had learned something important over the past year. I couldn't allow my past to keep dictating my present. The woman I had once loved, who had betrayed me, was no longer my concern. I had to move forward. Later that evening, when I was sitting with Emily, I decided to share the news with her. I knew I didn't want to hide anything from her, especially something as significant as this. "Hey," I said a little hesitantly, "I got a call from my lawyer today. It's about Rachel. She's appealing the settlement. Wants to revisit the financials." Emily looked up from her book, her expression a mix of concern and calm understanding. Is that something you want to revisit? The financial stuff, I mean? I shook my head. No, not at all. I don't want to go back to that. The whole thing is over. But it's just frustrating. I don't understand why she can't just let it go. Because, Jack, some people never let go of control. But you've moved on and that's what matters. You don't have to engage with her anymore. You don't owe her anything. You're building your life. You're choosing a future that's different from the past. Her words grounded me in the present. I had done the hard work of moving on, of letting go, and I wasn't about to let anything, or anyone, pull me back into the past. I know, I said, squeezing her hand. I just needed to vent. Thanks for listening. She smiled, her eyes warm. Of course. You've got this, Jack. You've always had it in you. Don't let anything from the past hold you back. I smiled back, feeling a surge of gratitude for her support. Emily wasn't just my partner in the sense of sharing a home or a life. She was the person who helped me face my past with strength, who allowed me to feel heard and understood. And most of all, she gave me the space to be who I was, without judgment, without expectation. As the days passed, the legal matter slowly faded into the background. My lawyer handled the details, and though I occasionally got updates, I realized something important. I no longer cared. The past was the past, and nothing from it could touch the life I was building with Emily. And then, one quiet evening as we sat watching the sunset together, just like we had done so many times before, Emily leaned in, kissed me lightly on the cheek and whispered softly, "I'm glad we're here. Together." I looked at her, my heart swelling with emotion, knowing that I had found something rare, something worth holding on to. "Me too," I said. "More than you'll ever know." In that moment, I realized that I had everything I needed right here: peace, love, and a future that was full of promise. My journey had been long, but it had led me here, to this place of stability and growth. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living fully and completely, with someone who shared my vision for the future. Together, we were writing our story, a story that wasn't defined by the past, but by the choices we made every day. And with Emily by my side, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The past no longer had a hold on me. The future was waiting, and I was ready to step into it, hand in hand with the person I loved. The days and weeks that followed felt like a slow, steady building of something solid. Emily and I had been through a lot, separately and together. And now, as we navigated the quieter moments of our life, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of contentment. The legal matter with Rachel had settled. My lawyer had managed to resolve it without much fanfare, and although I had been frustrated at first, I realized it was just another piece of my past I could finally leave behind. It was as if every step forward I took, whether it was work, my personal growth, or my relationship with Emily, felt like a victory over the things that had once held me back. We hadn't made any grand decisions yet, but we were comfortable in the space we shared. There was no rush, no pressure, just the simple joy of being with someone who truly understood me. One afternoon, after a long day at work, Emily and I decided to take a walk through the nearby park. The air was cool and the trees were starting to show signs of fall. It felt like the perfect kind of day for reflection. As we walked side by side, our fingers intertwined, I found myself thinking about all the times I had doubted my future, about the uncertainty that had once defined my every step. But now, walking beside Emily, I felt sure. Sure of who I was, sure of who I had become, and sure of the path ahead. "I've been thinking," Emily said, breaking my thoughts. "We've been doing so well together. It's like everything just fits." I looked over at her, surprised by the seriousness in her voice. "It really does," I agreed. "I never imagined that after everything I'd be this content. But with you it just feels right." She smiled, and I could see the quiet understanding in her eyes. We'd both been through our share of pain, of betrayal, but together we had created something beautiful. I think about the future a lot too. But I don't feel anxious about it anymore. Not with you. I stopped walking for a moment, turning to face her fully. "You're right," I said, my voice quiet but full of conviction. "I'm not anxious either. I know that whatever happens, we'll handle it. I trust that we can build something together, something that's ours." Her smile widened, and in that moment I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't a dramatic change, but a quiet certainty that this partnership, this life we were creating together, was exactly what I needed. As we continued our walk, I found myself thinking about my past once again. The man I had been a year ago, uncertain and filled with doubt, was no longer the person I saw in the mirror. Yes, the hurt from my marriage to Rachel had shaped me, but it hadn't defined me. The strength I had found, the wisdom, the clarity, It all came from making the choice to let go of what wasn't serving me and to embrace the possibilities of what could be. The next weekend, Emily and I spent the day hiking through the mountains. The fall colors were in full display and the air was crisp, the kind of air that made you feel alive. As we reached the top of a ridge, overlooking the valley below, we stopped to take in the view. The world spread out before us, vast and beautiful. "This is perfect," Emily said, her voice full of awe as she looked out at the landscape. "Just like everything else lately." "Perfect." I smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle in. The past few months had felt like the beginning of something new, not just with Emily but with myself. I had let go of old wounds, of things I couldn't control. I had embraced the present, the future, and the joy of living fully, without the shadows of doubt or fear hanging over me. "I couldn't agree more," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. This is where we're meant to be. Together." We spent the rest of the day walking, talking, and enjoying the simple beauty of the moment. And as we descended back toward the car, I realized something important. Life wasn't about grand milestones or reaching some ultimate destination. It was about the journey, the small, everyday choices that made up who we were and where we were headed. It was about walking through life side by side with someone who shared your values, your dreams, and your willingness to grow. When we got home that evening, after a long, peaceful day in nature, I found myself sitting on the porch, looking out at the stars. Emily sat beside me, her head resting gently on my shoulder. "You know," I said, my voice low, "I used to be so scared of the future. I thought I had to have it all figured out, but now I'm okay with not knowing. Because I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together." Emily turned to look at me, her eyes soft. "That's the best feeling in the world. To know that we've got each other. We don't need to have everything planned out. We've already started something beautiful." I nodded, my heart swelling with emotion. "We have. And whatever comes next, we'll handle it. Together." In that moment, everything felt aligned. The pieces of my past had come together in a way that made sense. I wasn't defined by my mistakes or the heartbreak I had faced. I was defined by the choices I made now, and the life I was building with Emily. The future wasn't something to fear anymore, it was something to embrace. The unknown was no longer an enemy but a possibility. And as I sat there on the porch, wrapped in the comfort of the woman I loved, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we would face it with courage, with love, and with the knowledge that together we were unstoppable. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would take us.